All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from literally wherever you find yourself on this planet Earth. My name is Sam Chandler, and I am the Director of Commercial CS here at Kustomer. In honor of Women's History Month, I am very excited to be hosting this very special event about allyship and women in leadership with two of my favorite colleagues in the whole wide world. I am about to have them introduce themselves, but before we do that, I wanted to give you a quick rundown of the plan for today and what to expect. I'm going to kick off a conversation by asking Tanya and Lauren some questions, and then we're going to leave some time for all of you to ask some questions as well. The chat is going to be open the entire time, so please do not hesitate to join in the conversation throughout the discussion. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. Tanya and Lauren, would each of you please give a quick introduction and tell us how you literally got to the very chair that you were physically sitting in today?
Lauren, why don't you go first?
Okay, would love to. Thank you all so much for being here. So excited and honored to be part of this conversation. My name is Lauren Gold. I'm our Chief Customer Officer here at Kustomer, and super honored to have this conversation alongside Tanya and Sam and the rest of you. So how did I get into this chair today? Man, I would say a lot of grit is like what it comes down to for me, and a lot of amazing mentors along the way. My path was not always really clear as to like where and what I wanted to do. But I think through kind of hard work and positivity and perspective, was able to kind of find my way to where I am right now. Sam, how much deeper should I go into that?
I mean, we could go on for the rest of the week if you wanted to, Lauren. But no, I think that's. I'm not going to tell you to stop. I don't know.
Okay. I'll hand it.
Okay. I too am really grateful to be here today, and I just want to do thank you to Sam and Hope on the Kustomer team for putting this together. I think it's really wonderful to be able to share and be vulnerable with everyone who's here today, and create more space for women leadership and really any underrepresented group to have more ideas on how to make their career dreams come true. So for me, I'll start at the top and then I guess go back a little bit. So I've been a customer for over 5.5 years, which for some people I know you've spent like 20 years at a company, and that is phenomenal. In startup land, VC world, 5+ years is like eternity. It's kind of equivalent to those 20 years, but it's been a wild ride, and I'm so grateful to be a part of Kustomer. And I joined as the head of people and talent, and I am still that. I just also happen to have a second job, which is the chief of staff to our CEO. And I've been doing that for the last 2 years. And I've loved working here. The co-founders, Brad and Jeremy, are just super inspirational to work for, not just because of their success, but they're just honorable people, which I think will come out in the conversation later when we talk about allyship. In terms of myself, I did have kind of a straight and narrow career, at least to start. Went to grad school for work psych, and then went into HR. And I've been in it for a really long time, but I've always found it fascinating how companies and businesses just come to work. All the gears fit together to output what it does. And to get here, similar to Lauren, a lot of really helpful people, a lot of people who believed in me when I wasn't sure. And I think, the word that always comes to mind for me is courage, which courage isn't about not having fear. It's actually acknowledging the fear and then acting. And I feel like that's been a pretty big driver for me in a number of things in my life, and certainly has helped me get to this place today. But there's a lot of people who helped me get here too, and gave me chances that without them, I wouldn't have made the progress I did. So yeah, really excited to be here today, Sam. Thanks so much for facilitating all this.
I'm excited to talk. Sorry, Sam. Like, I'm excited to also talk. Like, that really resonates with me with regard to like taking chances on people and taking bets. Like trusting your gut now as a leader, as you like try to find those kind of diamonds in the rough. Maybe like their career trajectory wasn't like traditional or standard, but like your ability to spot those kind of like those qualities in people, maybe beyond their resume, I think is so important, because there were definitely many people along the way that took chances on me. I remember, maybe we'll dive into this, but I remember a mentor of mine back when I was interviewing. Her name is Wendy. And she was like, "Why should I take a chance on you?" And I thought that was the best question to ask in an interview. And it kind of gave me the space to fight for what I wanted, and fight for something that my resume wouldn't have necessarily reflected properly for the role I was looking for at the time. And like, I so many times flash back to, I can vividly remember, being in that room that day. And the startup world has a very special way of like leveling the playing field and allowing you, despite your experiences, to step up to the plate and own your own destiny. And that's, I think, why I love the startup tech space so much, because it drives such accountability despite maybe what you're bringing to the table on paper.
All of that is so reminiscent, Lauren, of our first conversation. So none of that is surprising to me. I completely agree. Yeah, we make our own destiny. I love it. Which is a perfect segue into our first official question. Allyship is a big fancy word. I would love to hear from both of you. What does it mean? And maybe Tanya, you have the official meaning of it. So I would love to kind of break into that. But also, just from both of you, what does it mean to you personally, and why is it important for us, for companies, for any of us? Yeah, Tanya, do you want to go first? Because again, the official meaning, I would love to just kind of get that out in the open. Like, what does this officially mean, and what does it mean to all of us?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking this. I think allyship, it's actually a really big definition, and I'm probably not even going to hit on everything it wants to talk about. And, today, obviously, in honor Women's History Month, we're focusing a little bit more on women leadership and opportunities for women, but allyship is true for any underrepresented group and how we can support them. And so what does it mean? Well, it's a lot. And therefore, I can also see why some people might find it daunting or not be sure about what it really is, because it encompasses so much. But in general, again, regardless of our theme today of Women's History Month, allyship means listening without being defensive, speaking up against bias, especially against microaggressions, creating a safe space environment, one that focuses on inclusion and making people feel welcome, recognizing your own privilege and using it to support underrepresented voices. And it's just really such a deep level of support for those who need it the most. And in terms of Women's History Month, celebrating and amplifying women's ideas, perspectives, accomplishments, advocating for advancement opportunities. And also, I think a big one is like being mindful in group settings, or even when potentially that person isn't there, and helping represent them or their needs, or, defending them appropriately. And so I think all of these things are different actions that can be taken. And I think, to me, the key with allyship is you don't have to do the entire list to be an ally. There's life is made up of moments. Like, there are moments where you can step in and be an ally and take that opportunity. And that alone makes a world of difference. And then what does it mean to me, which I feel like is also a different question. Lauren and I both talked about the amount of people that have helped us get to where we are today, and, the belief. And so for me, allyship really just means empowerment and not feeling alone, and knowing that people are there who believe in me. And those are the ones that I should invest my time in as well. And also the people that I want to surround myself with. And so I think of allyship as, it's not just about waiting for the allies to come to you. It's about finding them and then holding on to them and, participating in that relationship 2 ways.
Oh, not being alone. That hits on like several levels. Yeah, Lauren, I would love to completely agree, Tanya. I would love to hear your perspective. What has it meant to you? How has it entered your career, your life?
Yeah, I like what Tanya said about like believing in someone or having someone that believes in you. I'm a big fan of like people operate their best when they feel their best. And like, that doesn't mean that everything should be easy or you don't fight for things and there's not going to be hard days. But like, when I think of my career, Like there were certainly hard days, but like through the hard feedback, kind of like the ruthless feedback, like the radical candor, like all the things that we say deep down inside, like while it was sometimes hard to hear, I knew those leaders believed in me and that it was always coming from a good place. Most of the time, I've certainly also been on the other side of that, where that wasn't the case. And man, like what a stark contrast to receive feedback from someone who you trust, admire, and knows has your back versus like the contrary. And so coming from a place of like empathy and transparency, that there's a way to be firm and still execute and like have high standards while also believing in someone along the way. And I know that's always like really kept me going. And I think like helping to find ways to unblock, like kind of to unblock people's paths to being successful. Like that's part of the process. And like people need sometimes the support to know that someone's like on their side to help contribute to their success by unblocking maybe adversities that they face, like in all the different ways that allyship represents. And so I think that's another big piece of it. And coming to the table with like the appreciation of diversity of thought, I think is really important. Like we got into, I think back like many years ago when we were hiring into like a CSM profile, and we found like this woman who was really quite extraordinary. And we put like now all of our eggs in the basket of to exactly what her profile was, because we quickly made this assumption that like, well, if she's great at it, people that fit her profile must be great at it. But it's not the case. It was her that, you know, like it was she that made herself successful through a lot of those intangible qualities, and that replicating the resume, I know I kind of keep going back to this, but it's important to me, like replicating that resume didn't make us successful. It was continuing to find some of those intangibles that are so important to me. Like you're hiring for the person and less sometimes about the skill set. And that was, you know, something that really drew me to Kustomer after kind of many conversations and thinking where I would land in my next journey. It was the quality of the people and how like differentiated the experience was, and being open to finding a mutual spot that worked for both of us, to like kind of leading the team with empathy and understanding. And it's nice to show up to work every day, like knowing you're going to work hard. There's going to be hard days and good days, but also knowing that you kind of have each other's back. And it's a really unique experience. I've been on both sides of it.
Lauren, that's music to my ears and just really warms my heart for you to say that, you know, especially as the person who's been, I would always say the CEO is responsible for the culture, but I'm pretty sure I have a heavy hand in it as well. And, you know,
you do
being responsible for helping shape like the type of work experience that people have here, as much as culture can grow and change. Like that's what we do go for. We want everybody to know that their voice matters. They have a place here, that it's going to be a place of hard work and high expectations, but it's also going to be a place where you can make mistakes and learn, and that's all okay. And so for you to have the experience and see the quality of the people we've tried to make a part of this company, it's certainly one of the reasons I've been here. I have also been in places where the quality of the humans and the support in that environment made it so I couldn't operate as myself. And if anyone listening to this is questioning whether or not they can show up every day at work as who they really are, and the answer is no, there are places you can go work where you can be you, and you is welcome, and it's a happy thing every day. It makes work so much more joyous. I didn't even know I could enjoy work so much until I found a place that they welcomed all the craziness I have to bring.
Oh, me too. Me too. It's literally the same thing. I literally, Lauren, everything that you were saying, it was resonating first in our conversations that we first had, but also, like Tanya, I've mentioned to you, every conversation that I had with leaders here, but also just the crew, our crew with a K, these values become very, very obvious, and people live by them. So I think like actually that's a great segue into the next I have two questions. I'm gonna put them together. So I've noticed that sometimes there's almost a hesitance to call yourself an ally, or to act as an ally, or kind of push that boundary there, even when people know that, like, they inherently know that somebody should stick up and say something. I would love to get your take on, why do you think that happens? Like, it was really refreshing to me, I guess sadly, but really refreshing when I came to Customer, and people were living these values, and it wasn't a question of allyship and if, but it was just part of the culture. And so I would love to hear both of your thoughts on what do you think keeps people from doing that, and also how do we make it easier to foster empathy? That's really all allyship is, right? Is empathy. What keeps people from acting, and how do we get people to feel that empathy?
Yeah. Lauren, do you mind if I go first?
Please.
Great. I think the answer to both of your questions is it starts at the top. Leadership absolutely sets the tone. And if they don't make it a priority, if they don't do it when it matters, and everybody makes mistakes, it's hard to always remember to be an ally. It's hard to also navigate some of these situations, some of them that pop up, whether there's an inappropriate comment or a very subtle comment. It's hard to know what to do in a group setting with a client. Like, there's just so many angles that no one's expected to be perfect. But I think it's all about recognizing, learning, and making change. And again, like, speaking up. And so when I think about Customer and being here, I think what you're saying, Sam, is you see all of leadership also embodying this, and then it's carried out through the core values and the actions that are happening at the business, which is really important to me because, again, I too have been at places where they said it, but it didn't happen. And I think that's almost worse, where it's like, we're going to do this, but then our actions don't match our behaviors. I also think we're all working on being better listeners and better empathizers. I know I'm very action oriented, and sometimes I'll fail to actually truly empathize with someone on my team. I'll just be like, here's the solution, let's go. And sometimes what people just want is for someone else to listen. And I think you can also be an ally in so many different ways. Again, it's just truly listening to someone in a non-judgmental or explanatory, solutions-oriented way, and just helping them feel like their feelings are valid. So if people are afraid to do it, first of it, is your leadership team encouraging it? Second of all, you don't have to do the whole definition. You can just step up where you feel comfortable, where you have a moment, gain the skills, the comfort to do that, and know that it's just, again, it's a moment. And if you don't get it right, it's also okay. People just all want to feel like they're part of a community, and again, like that they have support and they're not alone. And so if you're thinking about helping someone feel like they're not alone, it's not about solving their problems, it's about just being there for them. So that's sort of how I see it playing out in a business, and also why a lot of people can be afraid to do it. Because, when I said, like, oh, make sure you can respond to microaggressions, or push back if someone's being defensive, or make sure you're creating that safe space, like, those are pretty big responsibilities. But there's just so many things. Like, Sam, we could get on a call and you could tell me you're having a challenge with someone you're working with, and I'll just listen. And chances are, most of the time, that's probably enough. You just want to feel heard and supported. I'm making an assumption and using you in my example, but I do think people can start really small.
I agree. Just honestly, listening sometimes is all that it takes. Lauren, what are you thinking? I know you have so many thoughts on this specifically.
I do. I have a lot of thoughts. So let me think. I have a couple comments. Like, I think, yeah, it's important for leadership to set the tone. I also think that this is one of those scenarios where we all have an opportunity to be a leader, and starting small is okay, regardless of your role. Being an ally doesn't mean you have to, put a stake in the ground and make some massive announcement and make it some, big thing. I'm standing up for someone. It could just be like, yo, come grab a coffee with me. Let's talk about how your day's going. Or finding someone who's quiet in meetings and being like, hey, I would love to hear what Sam has to say. Just having people's back in a not informal, reward seeking way is a small step. I kind of, sometimes when it's like these big, massive terms, allyship, my gosh, this feels like such a big, heavy thing. It's like, what's something I could just do starting tomorrow that will help me provide an allyship towards someone else on my team, in my workplace, in my friends group, whatever it is. So I think it's starting small is okay, and holding yourself accountable regardless of how you fit into the workplace and beyond. There's opportunities for it. The other thing that kind of comes to mind too, I think when you talk about these types of things, it comes across as cushy. And so I think women in leadership, or, any leader, or, people in general, tend to shy away from it, because when you talk about empathy and understanding and giving the space to listen and all those things, slowly, perception can sometimes be, well, that means you're not, driving results, you're not raising the bar, you're not focused on execution. And I think that's one of the biggest things to debunk around this, is that you can be a really focused on execution, an operational leader who drives great results, or an IC performer. It doesn't need to be in leadership, while also being kind and empathetic while you're doing it. Doesn't mean that, everybody wins and everyone gets a trophy and all those things, but there's a balance in it. And I think that execution of finesse is really challenging, to sometimes deliver hard news in an empathetic way, or to provide feedback, or to ask for something that you want. But I think that changing the perception of why, important things like this doesn't mean that you're backing down from other important qualities of a strong contributor.
Yeah, I think, Lauren, you mentioned a little bit about that earlier too, when you were sharing your personal story. And I absolutely think that that's true. And like right there, everybody, what Lauren just said is great management, is setting high bar. Yep. Jot that down, little asterisk, put a Post-it note on your computer, whatever you need. Yes, I still use Post-it notes. I believe in paper. It is really important to set, especially when we're talking about women in leadership in companies. We're going to talk a bit more about that piece. I know Sam has that in here too, but like high bar, high performance, and feedback is I'm sure many of you have heard this before. Feedback is a gift. Yeah, well, the best gift is real feedback, not soft feedback. Yeah. And you can frame that in a way that you're trying to help that person be better and grow and learn and caring about what matters to them. And it doesn't make it cushy. And, like for instance, Lauren, I don't know if you do something like this, but I have a document that I share with everyone who joins my team. It doesn't matter if they report directly to me or, a couple layers down. It doesn't matter. They all have the same expectations because they're part of my org. And a huge part of that document is just how I can support you. But the key is we do our work. We do it really well. The bar is high. And I'm going to push you to take on new opportunities and challenges, because I know that sometimes you won't want to. So you're just going to have to trust me and say yes. That's an actual expectation I tell people. And so I think when it comes to allyship, some of it is just being clear about how you can help someone versus trying to think you can do all the things, because that's not great either. So if you're like, I know I can help you in this way, and you can be an ally to people in that format. But I completely agree with Lauren. Allyship doesn't mean just being empathetic. It means, I don't know, to me, empathy also means action to some extent. Mm-hmm. And so if you're giving really good feedback, it's something they can take and leverage and make themselves better. Because I know, Sam, you're going to ask us about sponsorship, which is where allyship and sponsorship bleed over. But you can't be a good sponsor if you're not being a good ally. And that means, in theory, in a company, you're helping someone be a better employee.
Yep, I completely agree. So yeah, you teed it up perfectly, Tanya. I am absolutely. Oh yeah, wait, Lauren, did I? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna ask a question about sponsorship now, and also we have a question from the audience. So just know, we have one at the end. I'm saying that so that I don't forget, so other people can help me remember. Sponsorship. This came up last week for me. I was at a conference, and the idea of sponsorship, I usually put it in conjunction with like mentorship, sponsorship versus mentorship. That was a new concept for a lot of folks. And as we talked about it, light bulbs went off. So Tanya, do you want to give us the I don't want to say official definition, because as we were talking, I think there's multiple, like, or there's a world of sponsorship definitions, but I would love to first off for you to tell folks what it is, and then also in relation to allyship, how do those two things go hand in hand? And honestly, and Lauren, this I'd love to hear your perspective on, like, how does sponsorship play a role in encouraging women and people in underrepresented groups to pursue leadership roles in an authentic way? So that was a lot. I will let you all decide which parts of the question you want to pull from, but Tanya, if you want to get us started.
Great. Sponsorship is another complex one, but I think I always sort of take the most direct definition to be someone you can rely on as your champion, someone who can speak up for you, help you. And to me, this is where it's funny. I always think of a Venn diagram with sponsorship and allyship, and there's a place where they overlap, and then there's places where they're different. And one of the things Sam and I we were having a good chat about this the other day is, can everyone be a sponsor? My personal perspective, which this may be controversial, is no. I actually think to be a sponsor, you have to have some sort of leverage or authority within, whether it's within the company or outside of the company, to help move that person forward in whatever way that might be. So that would mean that not everybody within the company could be a sponsor. Now, are there sponsorship behaviors that other team members might be able to do, like publicly praising each other, or speaking up for someone with their manager one-on-one? Like Lauren on my team, she's been doing such a great job. She really helped me with XYZ, and with a purposeful way. It's, great as a teammate to give nice feedback, but it's also a sponsorship behavior. But I think in terms of sponsorship resulting in true forward career movement, the most advantageous sponsors are probably those that have leadership responsibilities within the business. And I do think it's really important for people, again, like I want to make sure everybody is knowing that part of what I'm saying is hopefully the allies and the sponsors find you, but it's also a little bit of work and effort on your side too. I know I personally
put yourself in the path.
Yeah, like you have to put in a little work. It's sort of like learning and development. Like, I'm an adult, I'm responsible for my own professional growth. My company and my manager should facilitate it, but I need to do it. And when I think of sponsorship, personal story for me, in a previous job, I had taken on some additional responsibilities. And I think this is potentially a gender stereotype, but I can think women are like, oh, I'll help, I'll do this, and not get recognition for it and just do the right thing. And I talked to my male leadership friend who I just thought, hey, this feels a little unfair. Would you mind talking to my manager for me and suggesting that maybe if he feels it's fair to have some financial compensation for the time that I'm taking on these additional responsibilities? Because if I do it, there goes the humility of me offering and raising my hand to help, but there's also a fairness to that. And if my sponsor / ally had not agreed with me, that would have been great allyship to be like, hey, here's why I don't think that's appropriate. But he did, and he went and he spoke on my behalf, and an adjustment was made, and it meant a lot on all the categories. And so I think finding that sponsor and having the courage to talk to them is really important. But I want to make sure Lauren shares some before we run out of time too.
I was going to say, I love that, Tanya. Should we go to the question, Sam, to allow some time?
Honestly, we're going to I want to do a forum after this, and I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, Lauren, but I got a couple other questions after that. I want to give them the time. Honestly, also sponsorship, we could have like a whole hour-long session on sponsorship alone. So let's round this out with I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and then we can round this out, and I will keep this train a-rolling. I will.
Yeah, okay. I'm excited to continue this then. I think another word that comes to mind is advocacy, like, having someone that, can help represent you. I think it's an important call out that it doesn't need to be someone with the same backgrounds or experience as you. In fact, sometimes it's helpful for it not to be, to provide like different perspective. I think, it's a good question to kind of ask, like, as someone maybe seeking one, like who could be my sponsor, and kind of figuring out the right path. And I'm really happy to have kind of one-on-one conversations as a follow-up to this anytime. If you feel like you don't have one in the workplace, you know, figuring out a path to get one is important, but it can also feel really intimidating and daunting, and you shouldn't have to do it on your own. And so, yes, like I am a big fan of accountability and trying to own your career and come up with your plan on your own. But, you know, this forum is also to provide additional resources for anyone out there that's like, this sounds great. I want that. How do I go get it? And it's not always as straightforward. And sometimes it could feel really intimidating as well. And so hopefully as a follow-up to, you know, the door is open to have some of those conversations around what mapping out your kind of path to getting a sponsor or becoming one would be a really positive outcome. I think all three of us would be so happy to continue that.
That way, I didn't even like plan that, but yes, Lauren, that was actually the perfect segue into the wrap up. So thank you for that. Like we're mind melding, and I love it. But yeah, I completely agree with this, and that is all the time we have for today. I appreciate both of you so much. I just want to say that I asked both of these ladies if I had this idea, and I said, "Hey, would you help me with this?" And they both said yes. And I just appreciate that, and it's a reminder to all of us: go for it. Put yourself in the path, and good things will happen. And this conversation is one that we should keep going. We must keep this conversation going. So with that, just like Lauren said, and actually Tanya, you said this as well, please always feel free to reach out to me, to Tanya, to Lauren, to your allies, to your sponsors, to continue the discussion. A recording of this will be available for those of you who could not make it, and we will send that out to you all as soon as we possibly can. As a final thought, I just want you all to remember, you are important, you are needed, and I hope that you all realize the immense impact that you can have on those around you. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us, and I promise you will see us all very soon. Bye.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome.